Welcome to an evening with Ann Perry, writer of 80 historical. Oh wait, I need my glasses. I know some of you were here to see Don Winslow. He has requested that we do this in conversation, so you have me as well. Lucky you. As I was looking at the book passage conference bio for Don, it mentioned he's the author of over a dozen books. And I thought, well, that sounds about right. And I began looking at the titles. And it's Google. You can go and you look at the titles and the books are going by. And I thought, I remember that. The Power of the Dog, and The Winter Frankie Machine, remember that, And then there was Slave Girls of Rome. And then there was Claire's Uptown Girls, which sounded interesting, unless of course you live downtown. There was Captive Women, and my favorite, Katerina in Charge. Because I'm fundamentally curious, I of course clicked on one of them, and there was this great bio. Who is Don Julian Winslow? Hard to say, but I can tell you who he is not. He is not Don Winslow, who writes whodunits for a living, which is not true. He does not write whodunits. In a case of bad timing for Don Winslow, Don Julian Winslow, aka Don Winslow, a pen name, emerged in the
so confused. I don't know who I am now.
Emerged in the golden age of erotic fiction and had established an international reputation as a writer of quality erotica. Then along came the author with birthright to the very name, and as he struggled to become a literary icon in his chosen genre, he found to his alarm that people kept asking him if he still wrote those dirty books. One can only sympathize with a writer who tries so hard to be taken seriously, only to find his reputation soiled by a common pornographer. And so it goes. Life is unfair. That had to be the best bio I have ever read in my life. But then, as if that wasn't enough, on Wednesday, I went online and was researching, and I discovered that the Cartel, Don's latest book, was #1 in cozy animal mysteries. And I mentioned this on Facebook, and Dan Fesperman, another wonderful writer, said, featuring El Gato, the lovable crime-solving cat, who infiltrates a Mexican drug gang and slowly dismembers its foot soldiers by night. Children will particularly love this gentle, violent newcomer to the feline cozy subgenre. So anyway, please welcome Don Winslow. So, opening question, what you been up to?
Writing porn. There is another, we've been through this here before. There is another Don Winslow who does write porn books, and yes, ma'am. And neither am I signing it for you. And we've been back and forth. He offered at one point to sell me my own name for $50,000. Generous, I thought. He's 83 years old. He lives in Philadelphia. His name is not Don Winslow, but lately when I've objected, he then changed his name to Don Julian Winslow. Now, this is why I'm so furious about this, right? Because I live in the town of Julian, California. So this SOB changed his name to make it more like me and not less. And the reason, David, that I'm going to hell, if the nuns were right, among many other reasons, is that he lives in Philly, I occasionally go on the Philadelphia Inquirer website, obituary page. Hopefully. Which I know is wrong, but I do it anyway. And but he's still 83. I mean, in a way, it's admirable.
Is this on?
Yes.
Yes, this is on.
Yeah, you're getting big laughs, so I think it's on.
I'm
If it's not on there, laughing at something.
laughing at my expressions.
Yeah, just laughing at you. Yeah.
It's been
Just
done before.
listen. One thing among the many things that annoy me about David Corbett, and there's a long typed list. I can send it to you if you'd like. He has the best shirts, doesn't he? I mean, look at this man. And that's a damn handsome shirt.
It was a Valentine's Day present from my lovely bride. In Mexico, a country I understand you know just a wee bit about. Shall we go there? Shall we discuss?
If you'd like, if you have to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's only been 6 weeks you've been on the road.
Yeah.
I love the whole, do tell them the white shirt, blue shirt thing, it's too fun. Okay, so what's the,
All right.
tell
Yeah.
them about your wardrobe lately.
Would you like to know about my
Yes.
wardrobe? This is
Yeah.
fascinating to you. Now this is on. Okay, you know John Stamos, the actor? Okay, I know John a little bit. And years ago, he told me, he said, look, you know, because he's a fashion plate and a handsome guy, and I'm neither. And he said, but if you have one good black suit, you can go anywhere,
Including funerals.
including funerals if one suddenly comes up. Oh, I'll be there. Believe me, man. If, as you know, somebody once said about, you know, the late Sam Cohen's funeral, you give the people something they want to see and they'll show up for it. But he said one black suit. So here's my strategy for being on the road for 6 weeks. I have a black suit and I have white shirts and I have blue shirts. If it's a television day, the blue shirt. If it's a non-television day, the white shirt. And this is how I've gotten through this tour. But last weekend, because one day I had 4 television days in a row, same blue shirt. You know, just hoping for cooler weather. And so my wife was allowed a parietal visit in LA last weekend. I was just driven up to my hotel, and she brought me not only her very pleasant, you know, self, but new, clean blue and white shirts. And because I love Book Passage so much, and y'all so much, this is a big day for me. Clean blue shirt. This is the first day of the blue shirt. So feel free to approach me. Yeah, it's good.
So, how much does it cost to get the major Mexican kingpin to escape from prison in the middle of your book? Because, I mean, you can't buy publicity like that.
You can. And in all candor, if I could put him back in prison and trade the publicity, I would. He's just a really bad human being, and I hope he goes to hell for longer than 300 to 400 years or 17 months, whichever comes first. 5 million was the only bid. No, I'm told that this tunnel, which he did not leave from. Please, come on. Have you seen this video?
No, I haven't actually.
Have you seen this video?
Yes.
What does it remind you of? A Bigfoot video.
Yeah.
And it's about as real. Can we go through this for a second?
Oh,
Do you mind?
absolutely.
May I act it out? Do you mind if I... Okay, let's just review a little bit, okay? We take the most wanted man in Mexico, the second most wanted man in the world, the biggest drug lord in the world, and we capture him. And then we think, where should we put him? Now, this is a man who invented the narco tunnel, David.
Oh,
It's
no, and it was in his bathtub when they captured him.
And yes, when he was captured, he's escaped from tunnels on many occasions, which I know works against my theory. He did not go out this tunnel. Let's put him in the basement. We're a little late for our Mensa meeting. Let's just put him in the basement. Near dirt. The reporter the other day, because now apparently I'm an expert on this. Right? So I did not see it, I'm now the expert.
Hey, I've seen the experts. Trust me, pal, you're the expert.
A reporter seriously asked me, straight face, stuck a microphone in my face and said, "Do you think Chapo had outside help?" I try to be a polite man. I like offending people, but you know, yeah. The tunnel was a mile long. A mile Chapo, of course, means shorty in Spanish, but you can stand up in the thing. It has a railroad track, air conditioning, and a motorcycle. Do you think he dug out with a spoon?
You know, if you use those kitchen trays, you're creative, you can make a motorcycle.
This was not the shush. Did he have outside help? They built a house! A house to start the tunnel in! The construction workers were waving to farmers at the end of their busy day. But let's go back to the video. And by the way, the federales are there, the state police, and the army. Right in the vicinity. Am I right? Correct? Okay, so now they dig a tunnel. Big enough to stand up in motorcycles. We've covered this. Okay? We have them in the basement. Here's the video. Okay? I thought the funniest video I've seen, if this guy weren't a dirtbag who deserves to die, in my life. Because Chapo gets up off his bed and he walks to, are we ready for this? A privacy wall. Now, I want you to think about it for a second. You're going to start laughing in a second if you think this through. Maximum security prison, most wanted man in the world after Osama bin Laden, who's now dead. Privacy wall. Because Chapo, we can't write fiction anymore. All right? It's done. It's over. Sorry. Chapo appealed to the Mexican Human Rights Commission. It's a man who's responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of people. The Mexican Human Rights Commission, that his rights were being abused because the surveillance cameras could see him naked in the shower. So we build a wall for Chapo to have privacy. And at the bottom of this shower, the floor is 2 inches thick. Is that about 2? No, I'm not doing that joke.
I remember that joke.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that joke. So, 2 inches thick. Okay, here Chapo goes. This is why I think it's a Bigfoot video. This is why I think this whole thing is a scam. I'm telling you, the guy went out the front door into an SUV or up on the roof for a helicopter. Okay? Because Chapo's many things, a great actor is not one of them. Okay? He gets up off the bed. He walks toward his private shower and his privacy wall. He stops and notices the cameras are looking at him just like Bigfoot does in every one of those videos. You've seen that, right? Bigfoot's like, I'm just walking through the forest looking for whatever shit Bigfoot eats. I don't know what they eat, right? You've seen this?
Little feet.
Little feet. And they walk through and then all of a sudden, someone's looking at me. Well, I better go to the shower. And he goes to the shower. Now, if you are the guard, the one guard looking at a wall of 20 video screens, but not in the shower, you might notice something. Chapo's fully dressed. Oops. This is Hangover 4 we're doing now? What is this? I mean, I'm a prison guard and I'm watching the most wanted man in the world and I'm really keeping an eye on him. And he goes to the shower and he has all his clothes on, but not quite. So here we go. All his clothes on, to the shower. Ooh, look in the camera so I can fool people later. Oh, I'm Bigfoot. Into the shower. And he comes back, David. He comes back because he forgot something. What did he forget? Shampoo? The soap? The conditioner? Because, by the way, every other prisoner has a shaved head and Chapo has this Beatles mop top. No. None of those things that one would expect in a shower. A loofah. Little dog. No. No, sir. No, ma'am. I say no. What he forgets? His shoes. And this is why you and I are out of work, dude, because we can't write fiction anymore. He sits on the bed with the cameras looking at him now, and he puts on his shoes, so it's not an issue of his human rights being violated by being seen naked in the shower, because he's not. He's not naked. He's fully dressed. Now he has his shoes on. We walk back. You're still there. I better get in the shower. And he disappears. But one camera has a slight angle. And we see Chapo Guzman, Joaquin Chapo Guzman, lift up a piece of concrete, which is something you also expect in a shower. But we don't see. You're all crime people. I know you. It's just as important what you don't see, yes, right? As what you do see. And what we don't see is this SOB getting into the tunnel. Because I'm telling you, he didn't. And this whole $5 million now let's think about this for a second.
Be my guest.
Okay, that was the chair.
That was the chair.
I got you back, brother.
It really was.
There was these 15 people out there, which, what did Corbett eat? But I'm here for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay, sorry.
Love you like a brother.
It was the chair.
I was just trying to get comfortable.
I know. It's been a day, man.
It's been 6 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say you're a guard who works on the prison tower, fence, and over the course of 10 months, you see this tunnel coming towards you. Construction equipment, heavy construction equipment. What are they thinking? What do they expect us to believe? Man, those are some badass gophers. In this part of Mexico, man, Jalisco's got some serious gophers. Don't you hear anything? Where do you live?
They have sensors.
I mean, if
They have sensors outside the prison.
Yeah.
Just like Pelican Bay. I mean,
Right,
yeah.
sensors. But if someone were digging a tunnel into your basement, do you think you might notice? Do you think you might see something? Hear something? No. And I'm telling you, man, this tunnel is a $5 million diversion. This tunnel is a $5 million cover story. So if the Mexican government can go, the guy's a really good tunneler. He's famous for it.
Yeah, he
you know?
escaped. We didn't let him go.
We didn't let him go. He escaped. They let him go. Now, the guards watching the cameras, 18 minutes go by. 18 minutes before they decide to raise an alarm. And you know what the authorities said? Not the guards. The government authorities said, we just thought he was taking a long shower.
In his clothes.
In his clothes.
And his shoes.
Then the government waits 4 hours before they put out the alert to the country. Because God knows if they put it out right away, someone might see him. And they'd have to catch him. So he didn't escape from that prison. They let him out. He checked out of that prison. I've had a harder time checking out of hotels. Because I waited 20 minutes the other day in DC to check out of my hotel. That's 2 minutes more than 18 minutes, I think. So you asked me one question, and that was that. But I have had a lot of caffeine. I've had a lot of sugar. My last 2 meals this week were peanut M&Ms. They're good. They have protein, they have chocolate, and they have an outside covering that does not melt on your white or blue shirt. I'm going to shut up for a second. Maybe.
Maybe?
Nah.
Nah, I didn't. I have to admit that when I heard that you were doing this book,
Yep.
because I always thought Power of the Dog was a game changer.
Thank you.
I think that Power of the Dog and Clockers are the 2 books that a lot of us look at and saying, okay, crime fiction's changed. And And I was happy to see you come back to it, because I did feel that it was the beginning of the story, not really the completion of it. And I know we both covered, the events down there quite a bit. I've noticed that a lot of the coverage now is saying, well, the fact that the cartels have splintered shows that the government is winning. Yeah. Well, go ahead. Feel free to parade around.
No, I'm staying in my chair now. I have nothing else to act out. Well, that's just not true. What happened is that the Sinaloa cartel, Chapo's outfit, and Chapo Mayo Zambada, it gets very complicated, won the war. That's what happened. I call it the Pax Narcotica Sinaloa, because they are now the dominant cartel in Mexico. There's something called the New Generation Jalisco cartel that's kind of challenging a little bit, but really Sinaloa has all the power. So what you see now is this one cartel dominating, and that's why we have a lull in the violence, although things are starting to heat up again in Tijuana.
Well, the Zetas sort of faded from did they burn themselves out? Or do people know, when we mention the Zetas, do people know who we're talking about?
No.
Hyper-violent ex-special forces group.
They were basically the enforcers for the Gulf Cartel for many years.
They began that way, and then as a lot of bodyguard groups done, they went from being protectors to being executioners, and they're the most violent and sadistic cartel, and that's a high bar to jump.
Well, I noticed that your book starts out in Guatemala, and the Zetas had a real connection to the Guatemalan Special Forces there.
Yes.
And I was wondering that, I don't want to give away much of the book, because I hope that everybody here walks away with a copy of it.
God bless you, David. And that was the chair, it wasn't David. I want to make sure we're all clear on that. My man David.
Some days you just wish you could die.
Yeah.
So
when I heard you were interviewing me, for instance, could I just die?
You asked.
I did ask.
So what do you think's going to happen now?
Oh, I don't know. It depends. There are some theories that say that Chapo and his partner, Mayo Zambada, have had a falling out, and it has to do with Zambada's son being arrested in Arizona for a very heavy weight of cocaine, 15 to 30-year weight of cocaine, and he has now disappeared from the federal prison registry. He was supposed to have been sentenced on a plea deal in San Diego on May 22nd of this year, wasn't. And the assumption among a lot of people is that he's in the witness protection program. So it's possible, I don't know this, nobody knows this, that Mayo flipped on Chapo back when Chapo was captured as a deal to get his son, a sweetheart deal. That's a possibility. So there could now be a split in the Sinaloa cartel, which would be extremely bloody and would, I think, bring back the era of war, because a lot of other groups now would jump in to try to take advantage of that. It could also be, though, that Chapo and Mayo are so close and have made each other so much money that Chapo went into this prison to get the deal for Mayo's kid, knowing he's going to come out and he takes a little holiday. His last prison, he had a refrigerator truck full of nice food and hookers every Wednesday night and movie night on Saturday night. Took over the cafeteria, showed movies, but only PG movies. And so it could be.
You don't need a privacy wall for those.
And it could be that the fix has been in since day one. So I think the next few months will show what happens with the Sinaloa cartel, and that'll determine what happens. But nothing is going to be solved in Mexico in terms of the drug situation. It can only be solved here.
Because we're the demand.
We're the demand. We are 5% of the world's population. We buy 25% of the world's illicit drugs. We're 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's prisoners. So we have 2.3 million people behind bars, largest prison population in the history of this planet. And a lot of that has to do with the war on drugs.
So I remember.
Did I make this really grim? See, I was funny a few minutes ago.
Well, you know what? I am going to change
Good
directions. Okay.
Great.
We'll move off drugs now.
Good
I know
idea.
that you're a big fan of Sidney Lumet.
We'll move off drugs now.
Yeah. But Sidney Lumet, you tweeted recently about saying you consider him to be one of the great directors.
Sure.
And which movies in particular?
Serpico.
Okay.
Yeah. which was a seminal film for me as a kid. Also, William Friedkin, The French Connection.
Did you see the French version this year?
No.
The French, The Connection. You didn't see it?
No.
Oh, you should.
I haven't been to a movie. I haven't done anything but this damn book and this tour since I can remember, since I was 13. No, I think that we the crime writing community sort of underestimate the influence that films have on us. Because we're of that generation. I was thinking the other day about Joe Wambaugh, and what would television be like without Joseph Wambaugh writing the Choir Boys and the New Centurions? Because we started to look for the first time at the interior lives of cops. So without Joe, there's no Hill Street Blues, there's no NYPD Blue, there's no The Wire. That guy turned what we did, inside out to tremendous effect.
Well, we talked, I think, also a little bit that his last two films, I think, were two of his best, and that is Find Me Guilty.
Yeah.
And Before the Devil Knows You.
Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Yeah.
And
which I think is a great film.
Oh, I think it's fabulous. But
Yeah.
We were just my wife met her. Is a big nobody grown. She's a huge Fast and Furious fan.
Well, listen. Let me say something. I worked with Paul Walker.
Yeah.
Did a very bad film of a book of mine, but he was a wonderful guy and had a work ethic like you wouldn't believe, and was kind to everybody on the set, and this was a good guy.
Well, he was in what, Running Scared. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, sure.
Really frenetic film that I thought was really underrated. And that was the first time I saw the woman. I'm having senior moments like crazy. The woman actress up in the air.
Oh, a woman actress.
Yeah, the woman actress. Yes.
Vera Farmiga.
That was David. Vera Farmiga.
Yeah.
It was Find Me Guilty that I thought was just, it's all based on trial testimony. Most of the dialogue is written from that, about the attempt to get the Lucchese family in New Jersey under a RICO indictment.
Right.
And it's Vin Diesel, who you think of, as this action hero. And I remember when I saw him in Boiler Room for the first time, I thought, man, this guy's going to be amazing. And then he sort of became an action hero. And then in Find Me Guilty, once again, you saw that, and I just thought he was incandescent in that film.
Yeah.
And Lumet, just allowed him that kind of freedom.
Lumet was New York City's filmmaker, and I think captures New York in better than any filmmaker's ever captured. I don't know what you think of it. You had that New York, just shot it in ways that were.
I don't know anything about New York.
Extraordinary.
Wow. So, the other thing that I always wanted to talk to you about is last time we were together, you said, what I love to do? I just love to drive cross country.
Mm-hmm.
The last 6 weeks may have killed that forever. But no, you really, really just love getting in the car and
I
just taking off.
do. I do. My wife Jean and I have done this the past 7 years, and as soon as this tour is over, next Thursday, Friday morning we get in that car and drive cross country.
To Rhode Island, right?
To Rhode Island, yeah. And then she has people in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Denver. So on the way back, we did those towns, which are really great towns. And then we goof around. Just I don't know. Where do you want to go today? And we work our way back to California. I never go home. Jean wants a house. I don't quite get it. Because every once in a while, if I'm in one of those snarky moods, I say, hey babe, if we sold the house, how long could we live on the road? And then she just walks away. But I could drive around the American West forever. I never get tired.
Is it just the West in particular?
No, the West most of all. But I was in Nashville last time we did it. I really liked Nashville. And I've gone to Memphis. It sounds like a bad song, doesn't it? Yeah. I really like Nashville. I've gone to Memphis. It's hard to rhyme something.
Well, it's funny because we missed that.
I'm really tired, man. No offense. I'm trying to do the best I can, and it's.
But were there places that you didn't?
I call everyone, man, even Otto. Reasons that should be obvious, but
that makes me feel better.
Okay, I have a Southern mother and a military father, so everyone is ma'am and sir except David.
But the thing is, you get off the beaten track. Tell some stories. I mean, for example, Meta and I drove cross country. We discovered Chillicothe, Texas.
Yeah.
Dang good candy.
Dang.
Which is dang good candy. It ends up this place sells the best pecans in the entire country. They ship them everywhere. But I mean, you find these little oases. For us, I've never seen the Blue Ridge Mountains before. I've never seen that part of Tennessee,
Great,
that part
yeah.
of Virginia, and it was gorgeous. I mean, so.
I don't know, man. We just drive around. I mean, we go to Telluride, we go to Moab. I don't care where we go. A Kiowa poet once said that the West has to be seen to be believed, but first it has to be believed to be seen. And I think that about travel, and I think that about life itself. And I have this goofy theory that every day has its reward. You know, you just have to kind of be aware of it. I sound very self-helpful.
Yeah, you're Marin.
Huh? I'm in Marin, I can say this kind of thing. You know, a few years ago, I did this movie Savages, and I was beat up at the end of that. You know, the book came out the same time the movie came out, and I was working with Oliver Stone. I was ravaged. And Jean had illness in her family, was flying back and forth from Lincoln, and we left California exhausted. We were living in condos because of doing some repairs on our house, and we were exhausted. I mean, exhausted, just psychologically, physically, emotionally exhausted. We had to pack everything we own into her car. My wife packs everything for every trip. You know, if we're flying to Europe, there's a microwave in her. You know,
Hey, they're hard to find.
she has everything she owns, and we get in this car, and all I want to do is escape California. No offense, I love California, but I don't want Hollywood calling. I don't want Oliver calling. I just want to get out, and we do, and we drive right past Vegas, which is, I think, a good idea. And we're in Utah, near Cedar City, Mormon country, and it's middle of the evening, and I look up, and all of a sudden a lightning storm starts on a sunny day. And I look up this hill on the passenger side, and a black and white horse come running over the top of the hill, backlit, David, by sunlight and lightning. I said, look. And we both looked at this thing and instantly knew everything's going to be all right. We're fine. And we get to see that. And, I live for that kind of thing.
I think that's a great point to see if there are people in the audience who might like to ask questions.
They're scared.
They do. Well, yeah, you prance around like a damn maniac out here. I'd be scared. I'm scared too.
I've settled down.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
You need an M&M?
No.
All right.
Later.
Oh, question here.
Sir.
Yeah, if you've been obviously very close to the whole drug thing, Mexico and everything, what are your thoughts on, would it help if we change something and legalize drugs here in some controlled fashion? That would then happen?
The question is, does Don believe that anything might change if we actually change the look to legalization or change the drug laws?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not the Mexican drug problem, it's the American drug problem. Interesting, lately, since 2 states legalized just marijuana, marijuana imports from the Mexican cartels have dropped by almost 40%. So by stopping fighting the war on that one drug, 2 states, we started doing something we haven't done for 44 years, win. Now, because and Chapo and his guys have almost stopped growing marijuana in Sinaloa and Durango because they can't compete with the American price and quality and the transportation costs. Now, you might ask, what difference does it make if an American sells marijuana or a Mexican sells marijuana? It's still the drug and it's still a problem if you view it that way. I would say it makes a great deal of difference because, if you're getting it from the Zetas, you're getting it from slave labor. It has blood all over it. It's women who have been gang raped and then put out in the fields to work those marijuana fields. So I think it makes a huge difference. So legalization's the answer, but it can't just be legalization of marijuana, the bill to keep young white men out of jail. It needs to be legalization across the board. And we would, through taxes and through savings, we'd garner something like 87 billion, billion with a B, Carl Sagan numbers, a year. What could you do with that money? Lots. How about drug treatment? How about, elementary school teachers are now, selling cupcakes at bake sales to get paper and pencils. That's a crime. It's a crime.
Can I do a follow-up on that? In any of your research, there's been a lot of European countries that have actually, Switzerland and some of these other countries, that have actually done exactly what you're talking about. Is there anything in your research that's shown that whether that's actually turned out to be a positive?
The question is that there has been some European states have actually explored this option. Has any of your research revealed what the results were of that?
We're getting a lot of results now from Portugal, which has legalized all drugs. And what happened is what we pretty much expected to happen. There was an immediate spike in drug use, what's called the chaos factor, which basically means mom and dad left the house for the weekend. And then Portugal's drug use rate is at an all-time low. So, granted, we're vastly different countries and vastly different cultures. But again, what we've been doing for 44 years has not worked. It's only made things worse. And so we have to try something else. And it can't just be fiddling around with policy. That's deck chairs on the Titanic. It needs to be a whole new way of rethinking this.
John, you put a full page ad in the Washington Post, which I applaud you, and I know many co-authors here salute you for doing that. What did you hope would happen from it, and what has happened?
There was a full page ad in the Washington Post that Don was part of. What did you hope would come of it, and what has come of it?
Yeah. Well, what I hoped would come from it was that, I addressed it to Congress. It was an open letter to Congress, and I did it in their hometown newspaper because I was hoping it would get laid on their desks with the morning coffee and someone might pay attention to it. And it's a full-page ad. It's a long article, really, advocating an instant end to the war on drugs and why. I thought I might hear from a congressman.
Wow.
There are what? The Senate and Congress, there's 535 of them. I've not heard from a single one of them. Democrat or Republican, but who I have heard from, Tony? Cops.
Yep.
Cops, FBI, DEA. I've heard from 50 or 60 of them telling me privately that they agree with it all. I've heard from an organization called Leap Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, who've asked me to be a speaker for them. I need to do my due diligence. I don't know enough about them yet to do that. I can't give you the name of the city, but I thought this was a total failure. And a major American city called me up, police chief there, and he said, I read this thing, and I thought it was going to be, I've gotten hate mail and hostile phone calls as well, of course, but that's a daily event anyway. And he said, I read this, and it just sounds like your typical stinking liberal. I said, yeah, accurate. Blue shirt, 4 days thinking. And he said, but then I really looked at it and I think there are some interesting ideas. And he said, so are you the kind of guy who just shoots your mouth off? Or are you the kind of guy who'll back it up and work with us? What do you say? Pretty much I am the kind of guy who just shoots it off. But, put me on the spot, So I said, yeah, I'll work with you. So when I come back off the road, I'm going to this city to work with this police department because they now want to put a drug treatment center in the jail. And this guy was saying, we get 87% of the people that get into this jail test positive for drugs. And he said, now we have them for 30, 60, 90, 120 days. Why are we wasting that time? Just warehousing them. Maybe, we can make some progress. So if we get a treatment center built in that jail, the whole thing will have been worth it. Just that one thing.
Wow, that's great. Back here. Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, no, the book is wonderful. I read it as soon as it came out.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Ted.
My wife and I just returned from a decade in Mexico.
Yeah.
And so we got to have a perception of how Mexicans not involved in the drug wars were reacting, and you touched on that quite a bit in the book. I was hoping you might talk a little bit about it. I mean, it ranges from an attitude of, it's not my town, it's not my problem, to absolute heroes who are putting themselves on the line.
Yes.
But there's also this sort of almost strange admiration in the middle
Yeah.
of what's going on. So maybe you could touch on that.
The question is basically the Mexican reaction to the drug war. There's a wide range of reactions and behaviors, going from indifference, almost lionization, to a sort of sense of a hero worship. And you touch on that in the book. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, one of the things I was really keen on doing in the book was to show Mexicans that aren't drug traffickers. I wanted to talk about art and music and literature and food and that wonderful culture and the wonderful people who've never had the government that they deserve. You know? So that was important to me. And you talked about heroes. I would talk about heroines. Women in Mexico are such an example to me. I cannot comprehend this kind of courage of a 19-year-old woman whose 4 predecessors have been murdered for being a police chief, and she raises her hand and says, I'm going to be the new police chief, and is killed. A woman mayor in Michoacan who shot in 4 separate gun attacks. Second one killed her husband. The third one wounded her grievously. She's in hospital for weeks and weeks, gets out of the hospital, calls a press conference, shows her wounds to the world, mutilating wounds, and looks in the camera to the cartels and says, you won't stop me. Women, social activists who were bakers, teachers, nannies, professors, what have you, who stared down the army, the cartels, the police, up in the Juarez Valley and elsewhere, to get prisoners freed who were being tortured, to look for women who were missing. Their courage, their bravery, in writing this kind of book, I think one of the moral dangers is you do tend to lose your faith in humanity. But those examples help to ameliorate that, you know. The hero worship is a tough subject. I think most of the people in Mexico rightfully detest these narcos. Most of the people I talk to, but there are kids and young people in these colonias, in these slums, who have nothing, have no expectations. And I think there's nothing more seductive to a person who feels powerless than the potential of power. A gun, money, what have you. It's extremely seductive. And then they look at a clown like Chapo, who is like them. 3rd grade education, left school in the 3rd grade because he had to go pick opium, harvest opium to help feed the family. Beaten by a violent father, starts selling his own coke when he's 15, rises through the ranks, and no worries, and becomes vastly wealthy. 17 on the Forbes list, higher than Donald Trump. Better hair. And George Funk, I knew that. I always footnote people, no, I want to be fair. George said that and it's David's chair. And they look at this guy who thumbs his nose not only at the government and the rich and wealthy aristocratic Mexicans, but at the American government as well. And that's extremely seductive. And then the narcos use this sort of double-handed method to control a population. On the one hand, they terrorize them, inform on us, we kill you, torture you, kill your family. But on the other hand, build churches, hospitals, schools, playgrounds, hold Mother's Day celebrations where every woman in a village gets a washing machine and a refrigerator. Hold Children's Day festivals, you know, where kids get toys and bikes. And so it's this double-handed kind of thing. And they become folk heroes, and songs are written about them. Now, in all fairness, they pay writers to write those songs.
And they kill some of them when they don't sing them.
And they kill them if they sing the opposite, the rival cartel leader's song, you know? And so you do get that hero worship, and it's unfortunate, you know, because there's nothing Robin Hood-like about Chapo Guzman or any of these people. They're cold-blooded killers and sadists.
But you brought up something about the government they deserve, and I think that there's
Yeah.
something about that context. That one of the reasons they become lionized as heroes, because that government has been so insidiously corrupt for not just decades, but centuries. I mean, since the onset. And there is no real sense of a legitimate authority in that country, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to get justice in Mexico is extremely difficult unless you're rich and you're powerful and you have connections. So you can't go to the courts, you can't go to your representative really, you know, you're not gonna get anywhere, but you can go to the local narco. It's similar in some ways, you know, to the Mezzogiorno in Italy at a certain period in time, and then the mafia that came over here. So you don't have access to the Anglo-WASP power system, and so you turn to the mafioso on the corner for not justice, but influence. And the difference between corruption and influence can be very subtle, I think.
Any more questions? Otto.
What you've been mostly talking about tonight is reality. Now, I read your book, all 7,000 pages. I started young. The analogy between the real life that you've been talking mostly about and the book is so close. If people haven't read the book, they wouldn't know that from what you were talking about, Jack, because you've been talking about real stuff. But your book reads exactly the same way. So I think it's fair to assume that the research that you did and the knowledge that you have, the contacts that you have, made that book so real because it is real. Is that a fair statement?
Otto was talking about how Don has been talking about the reality of the situation, but having read the book, all 7,000 pages of it,
And worth it.
and worth it, yeah, doubly worth it, really. And read it with Power of the Dog if you haven't read that. Read them both. Is that the book reads exactly like reality, and this has been said in some of the reviews. It's very much like it's almost like journalism as opposed to fiction. And was this your intent? Was this the thing that you were really after, formalistic? I mean, especially after something like Savages, which also dealt with the drug war, but in a much more sort of almost fictional flair, like, you know, Janet Maslin, that lovely line, you know, like your most dramatic grab for attention, or however she put it.
Sweet, yeah.
Whereas this is much more just a really solid work of research. How did that come?
Yeah, Otto, I never wanted to write this damn book, you know, and I came to it very reluctantly. After Dog, you know, I was tired of it, and the research made me sad and angry. And to jump back into it when it got so much worse. But I listen, at the end of the day, I'm a thriller writer, I'm a crime writer. I embrace this genre lovingly and gratefully. You know, every good material thing I have in the world comes from this genre. At the same time, though, I wanted the reader to understand and to know what occurred in Mexico over these years, to gain some understanding of how there could have been 100,000 killings, 22,000 people missing. And I had to find those answers, and in a fictional way, and I hope in an exciting and interesting way, to give that to the reader. So yeah, my editor refers to it as a docu-novel, because there's virtually nothing in this book, I'm sorry to tell you, that didn't actually happen in one form or another. So it's very, very close to the bone.
Question here.
The fictional world of some of your earlier books, like Dawn Patrol, seem less grim and simpler. Do you feel that you've moved so far from that world that you probably won't be going back?
The question is, the fictional world of some of of Don's books, for example, Dawn Patrol, it's not quite as grim. Do you feel now after this that it will be harder or even impossible to go back to that kind of a fictional world?
I hope not. I hope not. I intend to write another Boone Daniels novel. I intend to write another Neil Carey novel. Working on 2 crime novels now that have nothing to do with drugs. But in all candor, in all honesty, I will tell you, it's been harder to decompress from this book than it's ever been for me. I don't think I'm as psychologically resilient as I was 10 years ago when I wrote Dog. So yeah, I mean, my next two books are not going to be as violent and as tough as this book, but I was sticking to the facts in this book. You know, there were things that happened in Mexico I actually backed off of in this book because they were either so horrific I didn't think a reader could take it or believe it. You know, so yeah, I'm going to come back. I might bring Neil Carey back to the beach with Boone Daniels. You know, Crank sitting on the beach reading 18th century English literature, you know, and getting dragged into one of Boone's cases. Might be kind of fun. So yeah, I'm going to have some fun again. I think my next book is about puppies. And no, this is good. You don't like this. They lose a chew toy. And they go looking for it, David, and everywhere they go, everyone's nice to them. They say, we haven't seen your chew toy, but here's a treat. You're going to like it. You're going to like it, Otto, more than you think you are.
You want
And it's
to
short. It's 8 pages.
Hey, I'll
They
tell you.
torture the puppies.
No, that's what some interviewer said that to me this morning. Yeah, at the end the truck's going to come over and run over. No, it's 8 pages. I'm going to give away the ending. They find the chew toy and it's fine.
You know, okay, go ahead.
I just had a question. You took the Trevanian character, Nikolai Hell.
Yeah.
How difficult was that to take actual characters that were already established?
This is about Don's novel Satori, taking over the Trevanian character, taking over an entire fictional world that wasn't his own. How difficult was that?
It was really difficult because listen, that's a great writer and a great stylist. And great stylist, it doesn't show. You know, you don't realize how good he is until you're trying to do him. By that I mean imitate him.
It was the chick.
It was really hard, and I didn't want to do an imitation because that would just suck. It would just be bad. I'm not that stylist. I couldn't just imitate him, but I had to sort of try to take the core of what he did, try to use my own language and blend it in. It was really hard, and it was also not a prequel, not a sequel, but a midquel. Because the plot of Satori comes in a 3-month hole in the plot of Shibumi. So I had a starting point where I had to start him, and I had an end point where I had to end him, and it was really awkward to do that. I had to go from Japan to China, but he had to end up in Vietnam. So, and I'm not that smart, and so it was tough.
Really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed doing it. Yeah, thank you for saying that. It was a fun thing to do, and I love Asian culture, so it was fun to spend a year in 1950s Asia. You know, doing the research was a blast.
Now, you once commented, we're going to get it, we've only got, there's one question I want to do because I think we may have to end.
Don't touch me, dude.
Okay. You once commented that there were,
Where's my
you once, you know, it was after a book, it was really hard, and you promised yourself, no, I'm taking some time off. And it lasted 11 days.
Yeah.
Now, more than 11 days this time, or what?
No, I don't have them.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to drive to Rhode Island with my wife. I've already told her I'm not talking to her for the first 3 days on the trip, and I'm not answering any questions. If we're in a restaurant, I'm just pointing at menu items. Only go to restaurants that have photos of the food. Thank you.
Now, there was one last question, then someone had, yes, go ahead.
Well, as you talk about, you know, sort of the impact that you want your book to have, and it's sort of being a docu-novel, I'm reminded of The Jungle
Wow.
by Boston Sinclair.
Sinclair.
Which
Upton Sinclair. Yeah,
published
that's
policy
right.
images in this country.
It was Upton Sinclair Lewis. It was a weird book. He was in the middle of Trevanian.
But you know what book I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
It seems very similar in terms of its aims and its creation out of reality. Do you have any idea of whether or not that kind of political action can come at this time in this country from anything like the work?
You just go ahead and repeat the question yourself on that one.
The gentleman very, very kindly compared this book to The Jungle, the famous muckraking book about the meat industry back in the day, the packing industry, and asked me if I thought that this book, Cartel, could have some sort of political consequences in this country at this time. I don't know the answer. I'm not being glib. I hope so. Again, though, I'm a crime writer. I'm a thriller writer. I'm an entertainer. If I can get in some information, and every once in a while I let the dog off the leash. Do you know what I mean? Every once in a while a character goes off on a rant. They start talking about the war on drugs, and I slip my political opinion in there, hopefully in an artful, entertaining way, but it's there. But that's why I took out this stupid ad, you know, is because I'm an entertainer, I'm a thriller writer, I'm a crime writer, but I thought that I owed something to this issue because I've been to the damn funerals, you know, I've been to the prisons, I've sat with the families. Tomorrow is the anniversary of a dear friend's son who died of a heroin overdose while trying to get into a rehab center. Some phone with her last night. And so I thought, you know, I've made money off these books and off this issue. And I thought I needed, that I owe something. And I'm not saying that's true for every writer, I'm just saying it's true for me, that I owed something, you know, to try to do something. Whether the book does that or not, I'm not the judge of that. But it's I've been on the road now for 6 weeks doing this at least once a day, and the response has been heartening. It's been heartbreaking and it's been heartening because it's a rare day, you probably experienced this, that I don't have someone from one of these audiences come up who lost somebody in the Mexican drug wars, lost a loved one, looking for answers, or they just want to talk about it. But also the response to talking about this issue and legalization and all of that, I find the audiences have, for the most part, been very receptive and responsive. And I think that there's a groundswell in this country now. You know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you'd never have dreamt that gay marriage would now be a ho-hum subject, a done deal. Thank God that now we have just marriage. We don't talk about gay marriage, now it's marriage. But you wouldn't have imagined that a few years ago. But there was this generational, I think, groundswell. And then all of a sudden, boom, it just broke through like a flood does. You know, it reaches a critical mass, the tipping point, Gladwell's famous tipping point, and boom. And thank God for that. And so I choose to be optimistic about this issue because the other choice is no choice. You can't live with that kind of despair. And so I'm hoping that a similar sort of groundswell occurs on this issue.
I think it's time to let Don assign some books. I'll have a big hand, Don.